you've got a brain surgeon or an astronaut, right? These folks are put in really ridiculously stressful situations daily so that when they're actually in that discomfort, when they're actually in a crisis, they're able to think clearly and logically. For the rest of us, we avoid discomfort so much that we don't build our capacity to meet it. And part of the solution is being willing to put yourself in really tough situations.
That's Grady. She's a seasoned keynote speaker and resilience expert who equips professionals with the tools to adapt, lead, and grow through change. She's also the best-selling author of Evolvability, Growing Forward When Life Goes Sideways. So you'll learn 1, why to seek out the second greatest threat to your brain, 2, how to optimize your 3 most precious resources, and 3, the trick to stop dwelling on your anger. And if you want a quick summary right about the actionable wisdom that Ann shares, I recommend you sign up for the free Gold Nugget email newsletter, which you can find at awesomeatyourjob.com. I'm Pete Mockaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Ann. Ann, welcome back.
I am so happy to be back, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to talk about your good stuff, Evolvability, Growing Forward When Life Goes Sideways. We were just chatting. Adaptability on the StrengthsFinder assessment is my dead last strength. You might even call it a weakness, but that's forbidden in their world to say such words. So yeah, this sounds very useful. Could you kick us off with a really surprising discovery you've made about this stuff while putting together the book?
Well, it was kind of what led me to write the book. So I've got a long history of, my child has some severe mental illness and autism and developmental delays. And so I spent years kind of in crisis mode. And a few years ago, my friends tried to get me to go camping for my birthday. And I would have rather had a colonoscopy than go camping. Like, it was the last thing I ever wanted to do. But long story short, I went, I fell in love with it. We ended up buying a small travel trailer. Fast forward a decade, and I'm now living in the middle of the country with cows and donkeys on a 20-acre ranch. It's everything I never knew I wanted. And what I learned through this journey is that we wear these identities like labels. I'm not athletic. I'm not an outdoorsy person. I'm this or I'm that. And comfort is really cozy until it becomes a cage. And so that journey of going from being absolutely convinced I didn't want to do something to being so in love with it, I created a whole lifestyle around it, was this way to show me that you're never too old to adapt and evolve. You can always continue to grow. The question is whether you do it purposefully or whether you just to default. Right. And so the goal is, how do I design a life so that I can adapt on purpose, not just end up where I'm headed and hope that draw a bullseye around it and hope this is where I was supposed to go.
And what happens if we don't adapt on purpose? What paths are we likely to find ourselves in?
Well, you're going to evolve one way or another. The question is, do you do it by design or default? And so what happens is a lot of us are so, me included, we're raised for achievement. Even your podcast, right, is about how do I love my job? And so we talk about growth and achievement, but sometimes we get so busy in the doing, we forget that there's growth and achievement in the being. And I think that if you want to live a life that is purposeful, that is in alignment with your values, that is something you not only survive, but enjoy, then adapting purposefully is the way to go, because the world is changing faster than most of our nervous systems can keep up. So it's about how we move through that journey. And for some people, they look up and 20 years has gone by and everything's hanging an inch lower and you may or may not be any closer to achieving your goals. And for others, it's like, we're designing the life we want to live.
Yeah, it's quite the visual. Thank you.
Gravity.
I'm thinking about, I am 42 now.
You're a baby.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what you mentioned, faster than our nervous system can keep up with. I feel like I viscerally had that experience in terms of just in the course of a day and sort of like, ooh, this thing happens. Oh, okay. Not what I was expecting. Okay. But you know what? Okay. You know what? Okay. We're going to take a breath, just reset, get in a groove, refocus. Okay. And then that happens again and again and again. And then after, I don't know, like the ninth one is just, I'm just about ready to flip a table. So it really does. You say your nervous system, it does for me feel like a physiological phenomenon. It's like if someone were to like, I don't know, give me a stab with a fork. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. There's a big unexpected shocker of a change, but all right. I can, but that pain subsides and you get back in a groove. But then that happens enough times and it's like, I'm just done. I'm just done. I should probably just go in the room and not spread my negativity and toxicity to others around me at this point. So that's what it feels like for me.
But you're not alone. And it's actually what's happening. I mean, there could not be a better way to describe what's happening. And because your brain craves comfort, not chaos. So other than death, uncertainty is the greatest threat of all to the human brain. So it is literally hijacking your nervous system and keeping you in a heightened state of fight or flight, chronic hypervigilance. All you have to do is check social media, turn on the news. I mean, we are wired for craving certainty. And when there's lack of that, or when things change very rapidly, unless we train our nervous system, its job and our brain's job is not to keep us happy. It's just to keep us alive and efficient. The good news is, though, we can train it. Most people just aren't aware they have that power. And this applies at work, at home, anywhere in between. The goal of evolvability is to help people recognize that adaptability is not a personality trait. It's a skill. And the way you build it is normalizing that discomfort, right? It's just your body sending you a signal. I saw something on social the other day and I loved the reframe. It said, instead of thinking you have anxiety, think of it as your body is clapping for you because it's excited. And so we have this relationship with anxiety and stress where we're programmed to think it's bad. And in actuality, in small doses, not only is it useful, it's incredibly good for you. It improves every measure of physical and mental performance. Now, chronic stress and anxiety takes a toll, but in the moment, just because it feels bad doesn't mean it is bad. It's actually just your body preparing you.
It's interesting. I was thinking about why some tasks or activities feel very boring versus thrilling. And sometimes uncertainty is exactly what you want. I'm thinking about a game. If I am playing with an opponent or a difficulty level that is so, and I think Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about this, like the flow stuff. If it's so boring or so easy, I know I'm just going to crush it, then it's not that interesting. It's kind of boring. And then if it's so brutally hard, there's not a chance that I'm going to prevail. It's just sort of overwhelming. I don't even want to start. And yet when it's dialed in just right, that uncertainty is a whole lot of fun. It's like, am I going to come out on top? I don't know. Let's keep going. And it's a lot of fun. And likewise, some tasks feel the same way to me in terms of medium-sized goals with a touch of uncertainty are in fact quite thrilling and engaging for me. And I had a professor who once said, well, I guess that's when it comes to uncertainty, we have insurance companies and we have casinos. Because some people want less and some people want more. So how do you think about all this stuff?
There's a difference between knowing it, thinking it, and practicing it. So I'm the first to admit that just because you know something doesn't mean you always practice it. And there are times where I'm stuck in a place of uncertainty, whether it's work-related or whether it's personal related. And I've noticed what you noticed. There are times where it's exciting and thrilling, and there are other times where it's not. So I tried to dig into the research behind that. Why are there some things that we're okay being uncertain about and others that we're not? And for me personally, when I deal with a lot of uncertainty, I was diagnosed with clinical depression at the age of 19. And trust me, the irony of a depressed motivational speaker is not lost on me. And I share it openly because I think so many people struggle. The idea of uncertainty when it has low risk, like playing a game, or when it's like, what are we going to do today? It's such low risk that your body and brain aren't bracing for impact. But when you feel like the stakes are high, that's when this becomes important, because in that moment, your ability to shift the way you think, the way you behave, your mindset, your approach, all of that determines the outcome more than your skill set. So we tend to think if I have subject matter expertise or if I'm good at something, then the outcome will be okay. But in reality, we can retrain our brain so that regardless of the stakes, we're able to adapt and adjust. Think about it like this. If you've got a brain surgeon or an astronaut, right? These folks are put in really ridiculously stressful situations daily so that when they're actually in that discomfort, when they're actually in a crisis, they're able to think clearly and logically. For the rest of us, we avoid discomfort so much that we don't build our capacity to meet it. And part of the solution is being willing to put yourself in really tough situations. So if you want to build resilience, you have to overcome adversity. It doesn't happen during a day at the spa. If you want to build adaptability, you have to shift the way you think and react and process. If you want to build confidence, you have to make decisions yourself, sometimes the wrong ones, to prove to yourself that you're able to navigate it. So the thing that we're avoiding is the very thing that can help us build the skill.
Well, that's intriguing. When you think about building a skill or a capability, I'm thinking about measurement. Like if I'm developing physical strength or speed or endurance, I can look at, the weight or the reps or the miles per hour. I'm curious in the literature or research, like what is the means by which we measure and assess progress and growth in this dimension?
So, for example, if you're indecisive and really struggle with making decisions, you can measure how many times you flip-flop back and forth or how many people you ask for their input or their advice. If you're trying to measure anything, right, it boils down to, can I build the skill of optimizing my time, energy, and attention? Sure. How many interruptions do you allow per hour? And how long does it take you to recover? So you can measure anything because you're right. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. The problem is you can learn it in a classroom, but you have to constantly be put in situations that force you to practice it, which means that if you don't have a chance to build these skills at work, you should be building these skills at home. So at work, it might look like taking on an assignment or a stretch project that you don't feel ready for, or that you're not 100% confident that you're able to do it. At home, if you're not able to do that at work, it's taking up a new hobby. Something you have to be brave enough to suck at something new. And most of us don't like that. The beginner's mind, this ability to start over in learning, is so foreign to us as adults because we've already gone through the discomfort. Like, think about a baby, right? Like if a baby starts to walk and they fall down, the baby doesn't go, screw it, I guess walking just isn't my thing. They keep falling down until they get balance. We get to a certain age and we're like, I don't want to fall down anymore. I'm tired of falling down. I just want to succeed. The only problem with that is wisdom comes from experience. Experience comes from failure, and failure is the price of admission for growth. So we have to reframe the way we're looking at the failure as feedback, not a judgment on our character. We have to shift our relationship with discomfort. All of my research in the past has been on resilience. How do you bounce back? But that's survival. That's not thriving. So if you want to have a life that feels good to live, then we have to make conscious decisions about what we're willing to embrace. And for me, learning how to sit in the anxiety and sit in the discomfort and sit in that has ended up teaching me how to build the skill to do it better without such discomfort.
Well, that's interesting in terms of training or working this capacity, because it seems like you could overwhelm yourself and go overboard, and sometimes life already feels overwhelming without taking on any additional stretch challenges and opportunities. So you've got a handy little acronym: emotional aptitude, values, optimization, leadership, versatility, empowerment. When it comes to the optimizing of things, like how do you think about that? To take on some challenge, but not too much challenge, to know when you should back off versus really get after it?
To answer that question, which is a great question, you have to go back to the second pillar of values, which is what is most important to me. And this changes through the course of your life and at different stages in your career. But when it comes to the question earlier of like Well, sometimes I don't want to be uncomfortable. Sometimes there's enough stuff going on in my life to where I'm already stretching, I'm already growing. It determines what your value is at that moment. So if your value is balance, do I take on the stretch assignment? Maybe not. If the goal is to have more balance in your life, then perhaps that's something that you put on hold. If the goal is achievement or growth or learning, then that answers that question. So the concept of understanding your values is more than just a feel-good concept. It's driving your decisions, your expectations, your behavior, and your boundaries. When it comes to optimization, if you think about the way we live, it's kind of nuts, right? We protect our data with passwords. We protect our money with budgets or banks. We protect our house with a lock. But when it comes to our most valuable resources, your time, your energy, your attention, we hand them out like free samples at Costco. And so part of optimization is learning how to manage your attention, build your ability to focus, and manage some of the distractions that are making you not as productive as you could be. It's about how to optimize your energy. Energy is like hot water or Wi-Fi. You don't notice it until it's gone. And then time. We all have the same amount of time in a day, 86,400 seconds. Every single day, we get the same amount of time. So it's not a question of how do I manage the time? It's how do I manage me in that time? So optimization is the skill of learning how to maximize the resources that you have so that you're not burning out, which is where a lot of people find themselves right now.
Well, that sounds like a super duper handy skill. What are your pro tips in assessing, monitoring, engaging with the development of this skill?
All right, so let me ask you a question. Have you thought about something else other than what we've been talking about since we've been talking? Like, has your mind drifted
Yes.
anywhere? Of course. Yes, of course it has, right? So is mine, right?
It's
I need
not
meds.
you, it's me.
Right, exactly. That's so true. Yeah, exactly, right? But all of us do. Like your listeners, since you've been listening to this, you've thought about other stuff. We spend half of our time mind traveling. Depression is linked to the past, being in the past. Anxiety is linked to being in the future. Your brain is happiest when it's in the moment you're in, even if what you're doing in the moment kind of stinks. So attention is our most valuable resource. It is one of the only things we have complete control over, and it is under attack. So a couple of techniques for maximizing attention. One, reduce your biggest distractions. And are you willing to play a game with me real quick, Pete?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so I want you to say the first 7 letters of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, as fast as you can.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Good. That was great. Okay. Now I want you to count to 7 as fast as you can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Perfect. All right. Now you're going to alternate every letter number. So A1, B2. There's only 5 more that you have to remember.
A1, B2, C3, D4, E5, F6, G7.
Okay. So you're one of the very few people who has done that without making a ton of errors, but it did
I was trying hard. I was working. I didn't want to I got an audience here. I'm trying to look good.
Let them down, right? No, but it did take you about twice as long. And so one of the things that is the biggest detractor of our ability to pay attention and remain focused is this idea that we can do multiple things at once, and we can't. Your brain is not actually multitasking. It's rapid task switching. And every single time you switch a task, even if it's your own thoughts, it's like shaking a mental snow globe. Your attention gets buried under a pile of glitter. And the more often you shake it, the harder it is to settle into stillness. So every time you allow a distraction, you're training your brain for short bouts of attention instead of sustained focus. That's why for kids, one of the absolute worst things for kids right now is these short videos on social, these 60-second reels, because it's like a flood of dopamine, but you're training your brain to crave novelty instead of the reward of focusing on something like reading a book and finding the outcome. So for attention, your phone is the other greatest distraction. It's something, most of us would rather leave our house without pants than without our phone. It has become everything to us. But the average adult spends over 5 hours a day on their phone. The average 11 to 14-year-old spends 9 hours a day on their phone. That's more than a full-time job. And it all comes with a cost. So for your attention, 2 things. 1, you're going to gasp when I suggest this, but do it anyway. It will change your life. Charge your phone in a different room at night and don't touch it for the first 30 minutes after you wake up. And I know you're probably like, but Anne, it's my alarm clock. They make those. Your phone is the smallest slot machine in the world, but it is constantly triggering a cascade of hormones and chemicals in your body. So if you do reach for it, pay attention to why. Are you reaching for it out of habit, boredom, to avoid a task? What need is that filling? So sleep with your phone in another room and go 30 minutes without touching it. 80% of adults check their phone within the first few minutes of waking up. And it is one of the fastest ways to trigger our brain into a negativity bias, meaning we will spend our day looking for what's wrong instead of what's right. We're putting our brain in a chemically induced state to focus on what's wrong. But when people told me to meditate, I got to be honest, I was such a cynic. Like I would joke, like, I'm not going to sit in a full lotus and drink green tea and find my Zen. Like nothing about that sounds appealing to me. I was completely off base. That's not what meditation is. It's brain training. All you're doing is training your focus, training your attention. So you focus on something, a song, a spot on the wall, a mantra, your breath. It could be anything. You get distracted because you will, and you come back to it. That's a rep. And over time, when you learn to choose where you direct your attention, you build the capacity to hold it for longer. So attention is huge. Energy, I would say one of the biggest drains on our energy is the number of decisions we make a day. What do I wear? What do I eat? What do I respond to? What do I watch? And all of these questions, none of them are huge. It's not the life-changing decisions. It's the 50 little ones that ambush you before lunch. They drain cognitive fuel. So if you want to make better decisions, make less of them. Start with the recurring ones every day. What do you eat? What do you eat for breakfast? What do you eat for lunch? Pick the decisions you make every day. On one of them, create a go-to solution. I eat eggs every day for breakfast. It's boring as hell, but I never waste a second of energy on what I'm going to eat. I pick out my outfits for the week the Sunday before. So every morning I'm not having to go through the mental cycle, because the later in the day you get, the worse your decisions become, and it drains your energy for the things that are really important. And then time, well, there are a million strategies for time. One of my favorite, I'll give you two of my favorite. One is kind of a play on that Mark Twain quote: if the first thing you do every day is eat a frog, nothing else seems that bad for the rest of the day. And Brian Tracy wrote a book called Eat That Frog. And he says, your frog is the thing that you're dreading doing. It's the podcast you don't want to prepare for. It's the conversation you don't want to have. Never. But it's the thing you don't want to do. And so we waste an inordinate amount of time and energy dreading that thing. Whereas if you were to just do it, then you would have not only the energy that you need for more critical decisions, but you'd also get a huge dopamine hit, which is like motivation in molecular form, because it keeps you going. But the other thing with time is we get overwhelmed with all of the things we have to do. And when I feel that sense of overwhelm, because I get it too, I do a focus filter. And a focus filter for me is, what are the three most important things I need to do this week? What are the three most important things I need to do this day? And what are the three most important things I can do in this moment? And sometimes the most important thing you can do is nothing at all, because your brain needs rest. Rest is not a reward for productivity. It's the fuel for it. And I'm not talking about like binge watching your favorite show. I mean, even Netflix shames us into getting up off the couch. Have you ever been watching Netflix so long? It's like, are you still watching?
Oh, maybe take a break.
Are you still watching, Anne? Yes. I'm just trying to finish the season. Yes. But we actively.
I'm so, I don't know. I'm so cynical now. It's just like, they just want to make sure their metrics are accurate. So they don't actually care about my well-being. They just want to make sure that someone's in front of this screen and their metrics and recommendations are still fueling that engine.
Well, and we could learn a thing or two from Netflix, because if you want to create a new habit, you have to make it easier to do. So for example, one of the things I talk about in the book is emotional aptitude, checking in with ourselves to figure out what emotions are running the show. Well, you have to check in with yourself multiple times throughout the day. So why not tie it to something you already do? This is James Clear, Atomic Habits. But You go to the bathroom multiple times a day, so check in with yourself while you're there. When you're washing your hands, ask yourself, like, what emotion is running the show? And how do I want to show up next? So Netflix has taken the way our brain works and monetized it. They've said, okay, a habit is easier to stick with if you tie it to something you're already doing. They're already watching a show. Let's just assume they want to watch another one. Let's start it without them even having to press a button. So the question is, where in your life can you optimize your environment so you're not relying on willpower?
I like a lot when you talk about the curiosity associated with your emotions. Those questions are so nice. What emotion is running the show right now? And then how do I want to show up next? I think I've fallen for a problematic curiosity about emotions loop in terms of what am I feeling and why? Because the why, for me at least, is very troublesome. Because if I'm feeling annoyed, frustrated, irritated, it's like, well, I'll tell you why. And then I begin the litany. And then I'm like revved up and worse. It's like, oh, maybe I just shouldn't have been curious in the first place.
But what you said there, Pete, is so important because anger, frustration, disappointment, anger is a secondary emotion. If you're feeling angry, one, it's not bad to ask why, but once you answer the question, dwelling on it isn't going to change it, right? So the thing I've had to learn for me is that just because a thought pops up doesn't mean you need to give it a microphone. Most of our thoughts are the mental equivalent of junk mail. So you might feel annoyed or angry, but the question that I would ask is, okay, what emotion is that protecting me from? Because if you're angry, chances are you're either hurt or disappointed or sad or embarrassed. Anger is the secondary emotion. So what most of us do is we try to analyze where it's coming from and we try to think our way out of it. You can only think your way out of a worry, because worry is the cognitive component of anxiety. You can't think your way out of stress. You have to feel your way out of stress. So rather than digging into why I feel it, process it. And what I mean by that is if you're feeling angry, stressed, frustrated, those are physical sensations. You have to get out of your head and into your body. So bring yourself back because you have to physically get back into your body to pay attention to it. And so we're taught to dissect our emotions and try to understand the backstory, but that doesn't change what you do about them in the moment. So therapy is wonderful. It's great to figure out where these feelings are coming from. But once you know that, it doesn't change the way you address them in the moment. So we often go to that step. Let's replay why it's happening, which just feeds the emotion even more. Instead of going, is this serving me?
Mm-hmm.
Is what I'm feeling or thinking helping me? If not, I get to make a choice. Just because I'm having it doesn't mean I have to engage with it.
I like that a lot, that distinction in terms of you can think your way out of worry, but not other emotions. Because without that distinction, you can fall into a trap in terms of, last time I felt bad, very general, bad. I thought, and then I felt better. Ergo, thinking is the solution when feeling bad. But you've got a much more precise point on it there. It's like, if the flavor of bad is worry, thinking may very well be just the thing. So you have a game plan to mitigate your risk, etc., deal with the worst case scenario, blah, blah, blah. But if you're feeling stressed, angry, thinking about it is like, I'm so mad that guy did this thing. It's like, well, it's not that big of a deal. That doesn't help the anger situation, having those sorts of thoughts.
Well, this is where the versatility comes in, right? Because if the way you have always reacted to anger is to get tense and frustrated and your fists get tight and your natural reaction is to go fight it or run away from it or whatever your natural reaction is, you can build a skill to navigate that differently, but it has to happen in real time. So that's where that emotional aptitude pillar comes in. It's learning to recognize what's happening within you in real time so that you can respond to what's happening around you.
Well, tell us about this versatility. So we tend to have a groove, you might say stuck, in terms of how we think and operate and interpret and believe and associate what's up. Can that be shifted, and how?
Yes. It's not easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it. I had a situation happen when I was in the 4th grade that completely shifted my perspective of myself. So remember dodgeball, the big red ball that has the pattern crosses on it. that like get in your face. So we were playing dodgeball. It was my first day of fourth grade in Corpus Christi, Texas. We had moved from Connecticut and everyone was playing dodgeball. And I had never played dodgeball in Connecticut. Apparently, children as human targets don't go over well there. But when my coach told everyone to line up, we did. And I started throwing a few balls and dodging a few balls. And then Angela Douglas, the biggest kid I had ever seen. I mean, we were in fourth grade. I'm pretty sure she was 19. She pegged me so hard in the face that my nose started to bleed and all the kids started to laugh. And my coach, in a very nurturing way, said, well, Anne, athletics just aren't your thing. I'm 50. I'll be 51 next month. I still have never joined a sports team. The feedback that you get, whether it's your Strengths Finder assessment that you mentioned, or whether it's feedback from teachers or parents or colleagues, or even yourself, that feedback forms our identity. And we behave like the person that we believe ourselves to be. So the question is, what labels have you stuck on throughout the course of your life? And who have you told yourself you are? I'm not a morning person. Great. Well, what does that mean? It means you snooze the alarm. It means you need 2 cups of coffee before you even contemplate a conversation. The reality is there's no such thing as a morning person. Sure, there are people who like being awake in the morning more than others, but we believe ourselves into behavior. We can also behave ourselves into believing. So if it's time to outdate those labels, that's what camping did for me. It became a way to show myself that that label of Anne being unathletic was just attached a time when I was really molding my identity and I wore it like it was the truth for years. Well, you have to be really athletic to camp, to hook up, to tear down, to do all the things, right? So I had to learn how to do that. But in order to do that, I had to take that label off. So the question I would ask you is, and you can answer this personally, like what labels are you still wearing that no longer serve you?
Well, it's funny. Part of me is having a hard time even grabbing onto, I am not an employee person. I think I would have a hard time having someone else be the boss of my work.
So then you have a choice, right? Because I feel the same way. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Then we have a choice. We can either stay and work for somebody else and complain that we don't like it and I'm just not an employee kind of person, or we can go out on our own and risk consistent revenue and not always having the answer, not having health insurance, all of those things, right? You can take the risk to go do that. But it's because you don't want to have the discomfort of continuing to wear that label, right? So I did the same thing. I had a pantry full of Spam and $3,000 in my savings account and didn't like being an employee. So I went out on my own. In hindsight, it was kind of stupid and unhinged the way I did it. But if I hadn't have done it then, I don't know if I'd have done it later. So the key is asking yourself, like, your belief system shapes your behavior. And if you're not happy with the outcomes you're getting, you either have to shift the belief or you have to shift the behavior. Otherwise, you just stay stuck and complain about it.
And what's interesting, and I guess in the United States, there's a little bit of like entrepreneurial hero worship at times. But I could see how that label really could, in certain contexts, hold you back. Like what? Who knows? Maybe a listener emails like, Pete, I have the most amazing company. We're starting it. We've got $80 million of funding, and because you are rocking how to be awesome at your job, I think you should be our chief program officer for this thing that's going to revolutionize higher education. And it's like, oh, that sounds really, really cool. And so then if those sorts of opportunities appeared and you have that label, it's like, well, hey, that sounds really great and all, I'm flattered, but I'm just not an employee person. That really could be to my detriment. And it'd be well worth it to have a good look. It's like, well, what exactly does that mean? And how true is that? And what's the real trade-off? And is it worth making here?
100%. And that's a great way to look at it. I look at it like this. We have the same routine every day. We brush our teeth in the same sink. We do the same thing. We roll over in the same side of the bed. Life can become monotonous, but when you build versatility, it's never ending because you're always learning. You're always building new skills or new behaviors or new beliefs. And so what that allows you to do is it takes away the monotony. It takes away the boredom. If you're constantly trying stuff, whether it's work or personal, then you're stretching and growing. And by the way, you don't always have to stretch and grow. You mentioned it earlier, like, what if there's enough going on in life? I told you I have a child with mental illness and autism. I mean, he tried to kill me when he was 3 years old. He was on his first antipsychotic at 4. There were plenty of times I did not want to stretch myself professionally because I was already at my capacity personally. Versatility doesn't mean that you have to continue to always learn new skills, but if you're feeling stuck, right, a way out of that is to try something you've never tried before that you're almost certain to be bad at. There's also cognitive flexibility, right? Like, I was the president of my debate team in high school. I was not one of the popular kids, but we had to prepare for a debate topic. And so I think the last topic that we debated my senior year was that showing disrespect is antithetical to fundamental American values. So first I had to look up antithetical, deeply opposed to. But then I had to research both sides of the issue, regardless of what I believe. Like, it didn't matter what I believe. I had to be ready to argue the issue with evidence on both sides. And I think in today's divisively split, politically unhinged society, at least in the US, I think sometimes we have to be willing to look at things from different perspectives. But our confirmation bias is dangerous because Google is always your friend. Google will give you research, or ChatGPT or whatever can show you research that just about anything is true. So I could say, hey, Pete, I no longer eat strawberries because they cause cancer. Well, I don't know that strawberries cause cancer, but I'm sure I could find an article somewhere that the pesticides they use is a contributing factor, right? So everyone's so sure they're right all the time. They forget the goal is getting it right, not being right. So it's not just about shifting what you do, it's shifting how you believe, it's being willing to shift how you think to meet the situation. I mean, when was the last time you changed your mind? Not because you were forced to, but because you were wise enough to know there could be a different way. And so we get so caught into our way is the right way that it's creating a huge divide. And people are lonelier than they've ever been, even though they're more connected than they've ever been.
Well said. Well, Ann, tell me anything else you want to mention before we hear about some of your favorite things.
I would just challenge you to pick one area of your life that is not going the way you want it to go. And ask yourself, what's one action I can take immediately after I play this episode to do something about it? Because agency is the greatest form of motivation. It's easy to feel like a victim to our life. If I had a better boss, if I had a better salary, if I had better coworkers, if I had a better partner, if my kids behaved better, there will always be things outside of your control. Pick one thing that is in your control and take one small action. It could be take a breath before you respond, send one email, make one phone call, brush your teeth, get up off the couch. These don't have to be huge, and little results create big results over time. Instead of trying to change everything at once, take one action. That's what I would say.
Big thanks to Ann for sharing wisdom with us. And big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsor to check out is Vanguard. As we step into a new year, it's the perfect time for all the advisors listening to think about how to set up your clients for success. One way to do that is to level up your fixed income strategy. But bonds are tricky. The market is huge, rates shift, and risks hide in plain sight. That's why having a partner with scale and expertise matters. Vanguard brings both. Vanguard bonds provide top-grade products across the board. Their lineup includes over 80 bond funds actively managed by a 200-person global squad of sector specialists, analysts, and traders. Vanguard's been in the game for a long time at a scale that gives them a serious edge. They're able to invest across many sectors, maturities, and geographies, spotting opportunities that others might miss. Vanguard takes a steady approach, focusing on reliability and consistency. So if you're looking to give your clients consistent results year in and year out, go see the record for yourself at Vanguard.com/audio. That's Vanguard.com/audio. All investing is subject to risk. Vanguard Marketing Corporation, distributor. One sponsored checkout is Monarch. I don't enjoy thinking about or fiddling with money, so I love resources that make this quicker and easier. Set yourself up for financial success this year. Monarch is a gorgeous personal finance tool that makes your money life easier. It brings your whole money picture from budgets to accounts and transactions and investments into one super handy dashboard on your phone or laptop. I was such a fan of the old mint.com and was super bummed when it disappeared. But the good news is that Monarch was founded by a team that includes the original product manager of Mint, and I dare say it's even better. I like the graphical summaries that help me drill down into things quickly and easily, and helps me get to the bottom of anything that just seems off or weird, or helps me zero in on great opportunities for savings faster. In fact, Monarch helped the average user save over $200 per month after joining. So set yourself up for financial success in 2026 with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes proactive money management simple all year long. Use code AWESOME at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code AWESOME. One sponsored checkout is Shopify. When you're starting something new, what ifs abound. What if I fail? What if nobody cares? What if nobody buys my stuff? Shopify can help make things easy. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., from household names like Magic Spoon and Allbirds to brands just getting started. Shopify facilitates everything from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to use a dozen different software tools. Everything's all in one place, making your life easier and your operations smoother. And what if you get stuck? Well, Shopify is always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support. You can get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. It's time to turn those what-ifs into ka-ching with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/awesome. Go to shopify.com/awesome. That's shopify.com/awesome. Ka-ching. All right. Well, now can you share a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
My favorite quote, and I think it's the one I shared with you 5 or 6 years ago when I was on the show, is still my favorite quote. And it's from Marianne Radmacher. And she said, "Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, 'I'll try again tomorrow.'" And that's true courage to me.
All right. And a favorite study or experiment, a bit of research?
I love Aaliyah Crum out of Stanford and all of her work around mindset and understanding the impact of the way you think about stress, the way you think about things shifting your biology. I love her work.
And a favorite book?
Emotional Agility by Susan David. I love Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, Carol Dweck. You mentioned Strengths Finder earlier. Now Discover Your Strengths is a great one. There's so many.
Okay. And is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate? Folks quote back to you often?
I think one of the big ones is stop trying to be right and focus on get it right.
All right. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where would you point them?
Evolvability.com. You can even take an adaptability index to see where you currently sit.
And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Try something new today.
All right.
Especially if it's uncomfortable and scary. Try one thing that is new. Take a different route home from work. Sleep on a different side of the bed. Brush your teeth with a different hand. Try something different.
All right. Anne, thank you.
Thank you for having me, Pete.
I really appreciate Anne's perspective of whenever you say to yourself, I'm not a blank person. I'm not an athletic person. I'm not an employee person, whatever that may be. Boy, that is some rich territory for self-reflection. Because you might really ask yourself, well, how do I know I'm not a this person? It's like, oh, well, out of the 15 times I tried doing that kind of a thing, all 15 of them I totally hated. Okay, fair enough, case closed, that's that. But you may very well have had say, oh, well, actually, when I was a child, I heard this. Well, then maybe that needs to be challenged. Or, I guess I just don't know. I've just never given it a try. Well, maybe that's some rich territory for new exploration. Cool stuff from Anne. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP1145. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.